Hey everyone, this is Vlad. You can find me on eToro as VladB35. I'm the silly behind Silly Markets.
And I am Levi. You guys can find me on eToro as Lizzie Apukaya, and I'm the guy behind Bullbrain.
For the next 30 minutes or so, join us for some hopefully intriguing conversations about what drove the markets.
And also what to expect going forward.
Together, we are the Silly Bulls.
Alright guys, here we go, back with the second episode. Last week, obviously, this whole thing was super new to us. As you could see, we didn't took ourselves too seriously, and neither should you. So, second week, second episode, looking at the markets, nothing special is happening. Not so many news out there, despite, or maybe the only thing we can really talk about is that the market was, the dominant color was the same one that is behind me. So I think all of us can say and share that we had some pain this week. But instead, there's another topic we wanted to talk about, because everybody's throwing around reasons of why is this happening, what impacts the markets these days, and one reason or potential reason doesn't seem to get enough attention, and that's the conflict or the potential conflict on the Ukrainian-Russian border right now. So everybody says news are full of speculations of what's going to happen. And today, Vlad and I just wanted to take a quick look into what are the possibilities that this actually is a reason behind the recent market decline, and how in the past how wars and military conflicts impacted the stock market. What should we expect if this or that happens? So I'm not really into this, but I'm asking you, what have you found? What history says? What happens in the markets when there is a military, shenanigan?
Right, so first of all, I do believe that this time around, the markets are just trying to price in the Fed's policies, and then trying to move away from tech and maybe into value stocks. And I think that these military tensions, they might not be the only reason behind the market decline, but they have surely accelerated this market decline, and then maybe not even the shift. They're just accelerating the decline right now. I'm not saying that the shift has not started yet, because everything went down. I dug a bit deeper into the historical data, and what I found is that markets, I mean, we knew this, markets hate uncertainty. And this time around is no exception. So as I said, historically, when there is like this pre-war phase and there's a lot of uncertainty, markets tend to go down. And we could see these, for Second World War, we could see these with last year actually, 2 years ago, with the Iranian general being killed in an airstrike. We've seen these with bombings such as in London, Boston, Madrid. We've seen these in the Gulf War. So yeah, basically everywhere. But there's still a silver lining in all these, because once the war actually broke out, then the uncertainty scattered away and the markets tended to go back up. And as I said, I don't think this time is any different, but and I think we can both agree on this. I think this time is just a show off between Russia and the West. I don't think, I mean, we will slowly get into this, but this time around, I don't think there's actually going to be a war. It's only a pre-war phase.
I really wanted to talk about, as investors, we should really be prepared of everything, really. In our, when we design our portfolios, I think the key intention, the key thing that we bear in mind, that we put something together that withstands whatever the market throws at us. And this particular sense of this military conflict, we should be prepared of, if this conflict will de-escalate, how would the markets react to that? And if it doesn't, if it goes into some sort of actual military conflict, what could we expect from that in terms of the stocks and all the other assets on the market?
fully agree. I mean, we should always price in all the possible scenarios. But before we can actually go and talk about the possible scenarios, I think we should do like a background check to understand exactly which nation stands where. So first of all, I think in this whole, let's call it conversation, I
Okay.
think, yeah, I think Russia in this context is in the driver's seat. And okay, let me put it like this. The economical relationships between Russia and EU. Russia is only the fifth economical partner for the EU, whereas the EU is the biggest economic partner for Russia. So you would say, okay, Russia is more reliant on the EU, which is true to some extent, because the main imports that EU gets from Russia is energy.
Yeah.
It's 20-30% of the energy of oil, it's coming from Russia, and 40% of natural gas is coming again from Russia. We are in the midst of an energy crisis. Prices have skyrocketed in virtually all countries, exactly. So the EU cannot afford prices to go up 1 cent, let alone to lose 40% of its supply.
Absolutely, yeah.
Exactly. Second of all, the NATO, they can only lose their face because they've claimed to help, to jump, to do, to ta-ta-tam. Russia can lose way more because Russia, in this particular case, I mean, their demands are pretty simple. We don't want Ukraine to be accepted ever into NATO. And that makes sense because if Ukraine were to be were to join in NATO, then you would have Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, Romania, Bulgaria, Ukraine. I almost
So they're
forgot
basically
about it.
a wall of NATO countries, just as you put it
Exactly.
earlier, US
Exactly.
would become a neighbor to Russia.
Exactly. And of course, that's not something that, I mean, Russia would lose so much strategic power that it would be, yeah, it would become, they would lose all the leverage they would have um, on US.
Yeah. But on the other hand, and this is a very important question, what he cares about. Does he really care that much about Ukraine to risk that he goes in with the army and he risks that he is facing quite strict economic sanctions, that he's getting into a bad relationship with the European Union, his biggest, quite important trading partner, as we said earlier. So all these things makes me to ask the million-dollar question here. What's the point from Putin's angle to go and invade Ukraine? If he wanted to do that, if he wanted that to happen, he would have done it much earlier, because let's be honest, Russian troops are amassing around the border since April 2021. So that was like, what, 8 months ago? So if he wanted to go in and bring Ukraine back under to become the part of the Russian Federation, or whatever post-Soviet dreams he has, again, he would have done much sooner without risking that the West gets prepared. Because imagine if Putin decides to walk into Ukraine 6 months ago, all of a sudden, using all the army that is stationary on the border, which would be like this, it would leave the West puzzled what's going on, how they should react to that, because again, Ukraine is not a NATO member, etc. So if, again, I just wrap this up, if Putin wanted to invade Ukraine, he would have done it much sooner, much swifter, without all these shenanigans and all this standoff with the West and the NATO. So again, I'm still sitting here trying to think about one single reason why would Putin do that in the first place.
I think there are about 4 scenarios that could play out. The first of all hell breaks loose and Russia goes to war with the NATO. For those of you that are actually scared of this scenario, don't. I think there are so many reasons why this won't happen. First of all, nobody wants it. Nobody can afford it. There's so much more to lose than to gain. And then you already have Germany, I mean, big members of the NATO that said, no, we don't really want to get involved in this. You have, Turkey, that's another big force of the NATO, that they're in the midst of an economic crisis of their own, and they have very good relationships with Russia. Then Russia, it might look like it's one against all, one power against all the NATO, but then you also have to think that even though there is no concrete agreement or official agreement between Russia and China, their strategic partnership is set in stone. I've even read articles about Russia and China doing some joint drills in the Kamchatka, near Japan. So, as I said before, NATO can only lose face. Russia has bigger ambitions. Russia is in the driver's seat in this conversation, and there's too much to lose and so little to gain. So this won't happen. The second option would be that Russia will back off. They said, okay, we were bluffing. We don't want these sanctions to apply to us. But then that would show such a big, such a lack power from Putin, that, and it would give so much leverage to NATO, that again, I don't think Putin will be able, would ever accept it to happen. Then we have the third option, and third and fourth, I think these two are the most possible outcomes. So first of all, NATO will sign off on Russia's demands. They said, okay, we want to accept Ukraine, please back off, and that's that. That's nobody loses anything in this scenario. Nobody loses anything economically. Nobody loses their lives, most importantly. Yeah, NATO might lose a bit of face, but that's that. And fourth option, Russia might actually go forward with this. They might actually go on and invade Russia. But the only thing that NATO will do, they will provide some some weaponry and financial help to Ukraine. And it will become just this war of war. Side note, I'm not sure if that's the right
that's just an existing word, but we're gonna look that up.
Sure, we will. But in all these cases, in all these viable cases, I think that what's gonna happen, I mean, this is coming back to my initial idea, it will scatter that uncertainty around the markets. Investors will know how to act in these cases. So if I were to point out certain asset classes that I would go forward with, that would be gold. That's actually been the best, one of the best assets during war times. Oil, I mean, we've talked about this before. You cannot really go wrong with oil in these scenarios.
Yet another reason to be long on oil.
Exactly. I mean, please don't crucify us for being bullish on the black gold, again, gold. And thirdly, I would go into value stocks, but value stocks with very strong balance sheets. And I mean, people, we've seen this sell-off. The S&P is down 8-point-something%, Nasdaq is down 12-point-something%. In this sell-off, we've also had very good companies that have been actually caught in the middle. I don't want to say this, but I'm gonna say this. So yeah, buy the dip, but buy the dip carefully.
Absolutely. Just this very last piece that you just said, I think that perfectly reflects what I'm thinking. yeah, guys, buy the dip, but be super careful, because we can't know, we can never be sure how much of the market's uncertainty comes from these global, geopolitical shenanigans, and how much of this downturn is, rooted in some totally different reasons, such as what we discussed last week about the inflation outlook, or US monetary policy and these kind of things. So again, I think we can both agree that this week was for the pain. This week was for one of those weeks when we remind ourselves, we go back to our research and we look again why we decided to invest in those companies. Do that, stick to your guns. If the fundamentals did not change with a certain company or an asset, don't do anything, just sit tight. But again, buying the dip could be only a smart way forward if you're confident that whatever company you pick is somehow protected from all these kind of shenanigans. So I think it's pretty much also constitutes as a wrap up for today's episode. We wanted to touch base on how this potential or actual real conflict between Ukraine and Russia could play out on the markets, what's possibly behind the both sides' intentions, what are some things that people might overlook, such as what we said about how early this started, or what could each side win or lose if things escalate, So I think on this note, we just can say that thanks for sticking around for yet another time. Next week, again, depending how busy the market's going to be or what's happening on the markets, we gonna either wrap that up or recap what moves the markets, or we're just gonna find a topic for you guys that we can again look into and look behind those news. And that's it.
Thank you very much, guys. See you around.
Thank you, guys. See you next time.